Kenya, once seen as East Africa's economic powerhouse, has been engulfed in chaos over the past 2 months. Violent protests, fueled by anger over high taxes, unemployment and government corruption, have shaken the country. President William Ruto, who came to power in 2022 with promises of economic relief for the common citizen hustlers, now faces a critical test. After weeks of unrest, President Ruto has finally taken decisive steps to stabilize the economy and address public grievances.
Pay 10% interest daily. What does that translate to in a year? We will calculate the numbers, right? So, why we rolled out the Hustler Fund was for 3 fundamental reasons. And that is why we called it the Financial Inclusion Fund. It was not supposed to compete with banks. It wasn't meant to replace credit in banks. It was meant to correct a market failure.
But will these measures be enough to calm the rage of the people? Or is this just another political maneuver to buy time while old imperialist forces continue to exploit Kenya's resources? Economic hardships are the roots of Kenya's unrest. The country's economy has been struggling under the weight of multiple crises. The most pressing issue is the country's skyrocketing public debt, which has surpassed Ksh 10 trillion, nearly 70% of GDP, raising fears of economic instability. At the same time, Kenyans are grappling with soaring inflation, particularly in food and fuel prices, making basic necessities unaffordable for many. Perhaps most alarming is the unemployment crisis, especially among the youth, where joblessness stands at a staggering 39%. This combination of financial strain has left millions frustrated, fueling the recent wave of protests. The Finance Bill 2024, which proposed new taxes on basic goods, was the final straw. Young Kenyans led by Gen Z activists took to the streets in unprecedented numbers, forcing Ruto to withdraw the bill. People of Kenya have shown political distrust over Ruto's leadership. Many Kenyans feel deeply betrayed by President Ruto's government, which came to power on the promise of championing the common hustler. Instead, his administration has faced sharp criticism for rampant, wasteful spending, including extravagant purchases of luxury vehicles for MPs and costly foreign trips for government officials, all while ordinary citizens struggle to make ends meet. Despite his strong anti-corruption campaign rhetoric, numerous graft scandals have continued to plague his administration, eroding public trust. The government's heavy-handed response to protests has further alienated citizens, with brutal police crackdowns resulting in deaths and injuries, leaving many questioning whether Ruto truly represents the people or has become just another part of Kenya's entrenched political elite. The disconnect between the ruling elite and ordinary citizens has deepened anger. Ruto's new strategy, from promises to power moves. Facing nationwide fury, Ruto has announced several measures to stabilize the economy and regain public trust. In an attempt to stabilize Kenya's strained finances, the government has implemented several austerity measures aimed at cutting wasteful expenditure. This includes slashing budgets for non-essential projects and suspending unnecessary foreign trips by officials, a move meant to demonstrate fiscal discipline. More drastically, the administration has dissolved 47 state corporations, many of which were redundant or mismanaged, in an effort to streamline operations and reduce public spending. Even top officials, including President Ruto himself, have taken symbolic salary cuts, with Ruto announcing a voluntary reduction in his pay, a gesture intended to show solidarity with struggling citizens. Beyond austerity, the government is pursuing broader economic reforms to address systemic challenges. One key focus is debt restructuring, with Kenya negotiating with the IMF and World Bank for more favorable repayment terms to ease the burden of its massive Ksh 10 trillion debt. At the same time, efforts are being made to boost local industries, particularly manufacturing, in order to reduce reliance on expensive imports and create jobs. Additionally, the suspension of some VAT charges on essential goods offers temporary tax relief, providing much-needed breathing room for households grappling with soaring living costs. Recognizing the depth of public anger, President Ruto has shifted toward a more conciliatory approach by calling for national dialogue. Youth leaders and civil society groups have been invited to the table to discuss pressing reforms, signaling a potential opening for meaningful engagement. The government has also pledged electoral and judicial reforms, key demands from protesters, in an attempt to restore faith in Kenya's democratic institutions. While these measures appear promising on paper, their long-term success remains uncertain. Austerity and economic reforms could stabilize the economy if implemented transparently, but past governments have made similar pledges only to revert to wasteful spending once public pressure faded. The effectiveness of debt restructuring will depend on whether IMF conditions worsen austerity for ordinary Kenyans. Meanwhile, dialogue with protesters is a positive step, but without tangible results, such as real job creation and systemic corruption crackdowns, public trust may continue to erode. Ultimately, the government's ability to follow through on these promises, rather than just manage perceptions, will determine whether Kenya moves toward recovery or faces another wave of unrest. If President Ruto delivers on his commitments, Kenya could witness significant positive transformations. By slashing unnecessary government expenditures, more funds could be channeled toward critical development projects that benefit ordinary citizens. The reduction of certain tax burdens may help ease inflationary pressures, making basic commodities more affordable for struggling families. Perhaps most importantly, a genuine push to support local industries could stimulate economic growth and create much-needed employment opportunities, particularly for Kenya's disillusioned youth. These combined measures could potentially restore public confidence and set the nation on a path towards sustainable recovery. However, many Kenyans remain unconvinced, viewing these initiatives as yet another political performance rather than substantive reform. History provides ample reason for doubt. Previous administrations similarly pledged austerity, only to revert to extravagant spending once public scrutiny faded. The proposed debt restructuring with the IMF raises additional concerns, as such agreements typically impose painful conditions like subsidy removals that disproportionately hurt the poor. Most critically, without concrete strategies to spur industrial growth and create quality jobs, the root causes of youth unemployment, a key driver of recent protests, will remain unaddressed. Unless the government demonstrates unprecedented political will to break from past patterns, these measures may prove temporary fixes that merely delay rather than prevent future unrest. The coming months will reveal whether this is truly a turning point or another cycle of empty promises in Kenya's political landscape. Kenya's current crisis extends far beyond its borders, deeply entangled with global economic forces that continue to shape its destiny. The country finds itself caught in a dangerous foreign debt trap, owing billions to both China, primarily for massive infrastructure projects like the Standard Gauge Railway (SGR), and Western lenders. These crippling debt repayments siphon off vital resources that should instead be funding essential public services like healthcare and education, leaving ordinary citizens to bear the brunt of austerity. Compounding this problem is the outsized influence of international financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank. While their loans offer temporary relief, they come attached with stringent conditions, including tax hikes and privatization of public assets that disproportionately hurt the poor while benefiting foreign interests. President Ruto's current reform agenda appears suspiciously aligned with these external demands, fueling legitimate concerns about neo-colonialism dressed in the guise of economic assistance. Beneath the surface, a more sinister geopolitical game plays out. Kenya has become an arena where global powers like the West. Will Kenyans be deceived again? President Ruto's recent reforms represent a potential turning point for Kenya, yet the shadow of broken promises looms large over these developments. History offers sobering lessons. Time and again, Kenyan leaders have unveiled grand reform agendas during moments of crisis, only to abandon them when public pressure subsides, retreating into the familiar comforts of corruption and elite privilege. The true measure of Ruto's leadership will not be found in today's announcements, but in his willingness to sustain painful but necessary changes when the spotlight fades. Three critical challenges will define his administration's legacy. Will he demonstrate the political courage to permanently dismantle the culture of elite excess, or will these cuts prove to be temporary theater? Can he negotiate with international lenders without surrendering Kenya's economic sovereignty to IMF dictates? Most importantly, will his policies translate into tangible improvements, stable employment opportunities and affordable living costs, or merely provide another cycle of fleeting relief? The stakes could not be higher. Kenya's youth have shown they will no longer accept empty rhetoric rhetoric or cosmetic changes. If these reforms prove insincere, the next wave of unrest may make recent protests seem mild by comparison. The world watches as Kenya stands at a crossroads. Will this moment mark a genuine break from the past, or simply another chapter in the long history of betrayed hopes? The burden of proof rests squarely on Ruto's shoulders. For now, Kenyans remain cautiously hopeful but deeply skeptical. The protests have shown that the youth will no longer accept empty promises. If Ruto fails this time, the next uprising could be even fiercer. Meanwhile, the shadow of imperialism looms. Foreign powers will keep exploiting Kenya unless leaders truly break free. The question is Ruto working for Kenyans, or is he just another pawn in the global economic game? Only time will tell.